Bluff overlook stretches out across a blending of trees and a curving section of Clear Creek in rural Morgan County, Tennessee. A short hike through a beautifully forested area of the park leads to this majestic overlook that promises a splendid view for all seasons. One can get a sense of all that the Obed Wild and Scenic River has to offer by reading Free Flowing, The Spirit of Obed Wild and Scenic River. This handy guidebook consists of the history of the park, inspiring images, maps, and useful information on how to make the most of your time while exploring the park. We hope to see you soon.
Oh, how wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to chapter 51 of the Southern Festival of Books. I'm so proud to be here to introduce your author this evening, Alice Randall. Um, so many things to say about Alice Randall. She is a daughter of Detroit. She was raised with a true sense of the dream of what America can be through the kind of lens of a Black paradise. She learned even more of what America could be through her adolescence in Washington, D.C., and she's lived and written and been a friend and a wordsmith and an educator and a mentor all over the world. But she's chosen to make Nashville her home. She's the first Black woman to write a #1 country song. She had the audacity to take on Margaret Mitchell's story and reclaim it with a stronger, Blacker, truer voice. She's a constant source of inspiration for me and for many. The picture you see on the screen is of us 30 years ago at one of my very first Southern festivals of books. So this is clearly not the first time my mother and I have attended this festival together. And it's not even the first time we've appeared as authors at the festival together. We've co-written volumes from The Diary of B.B. Bright, Possible Princess, to our soul food cookbook memoir, Soul Food Love, but this time is different. She's the guest, I'm the moderator, and she's here with the best book, in my opinion, that she has ever written, and the best book of 2020, Black Bottom Saints. For us, the Southern Festival of Books is always a very special mother-daughter experience, as y'all can see, and I am thrilled that we get to kick back and celebrate with the audience a novel that was published only on August 18th and has now already gone into its third printing. Needless to say, Black Bottom Saints is, as I said, the best book of the year, is my favorite of her books, including the ones we've written together. And I'm so glad to ask her some questions about it with you all this evening. So, Mom, for those who don't know anything about Black Bottom Saints, could you just tell us a little bit about Caramel Camelot?
Thank you, Caroline. First of all, I have to say, I am so thrilled. I didn't know that was in your question, but my cocktail I've made tonight, a special one, is called a Caramel Camelot.
Oh, cheers!
Off the books, and it is Caramel Camelot is Detroit 48 to 68, the period of this novel, and it's a period of African American excellence in the arts, activism, athletics, and industry.
I love that.
It is this glory time, this forgotten era when there was extraordinary Black achievement in Detroit, where there was 80% home ownership, where there were thriving photography clubs and the most interesting live music scene probably ever come together in America. Mm-hmm. Extraordinary cocktail culture where the actual craft cocktail is being reimagined, and American labor unions are rising. That's Caramel Camelot. That's Detroit 48 to 68, and that's Ziggy's world.
I love that. And I love the idea of a Black America the way no one has imagined it or seen it before. You had to be there to believe it, and you were there. So
I was there.
I think one of the questions that it also occurs to me to ask to you, especially for new readers to the book, why a Saints Day book? Why a Saints Day book in this day and age?
Well, when I decided to tell the story of Ziggy Johnson, which I'll get back to, because I wanted to tell the story of the life of a man, Ziggy Johnson, who had tremendous impact on my life. He was quite literally a writer for a Black newspaper, the Michigan Chronicle. He was an MC at all these hot clubs, musical clubs in Detroit, particularly the Flame Show Bar and the 20 Grand. And he had a Center City dancing school for little children. And that I attended. So when I wanted to tell Ziggy's story, I started thinking about that a decade ago. Because Ziggy is the person who influenced me wanted to be a writer, and Ziggy is the person who really helped me move from trauma to transcendence. But getting back to that, so 10 years ago, I realized that I wanted to tell Ziggy's story. This is very much the book that took me 50 years of living. I'm now 61 and writing 4 earlier novels to get to. And I did 7 years of research. And when I started writing about 4 years ago, America was entering into a very broken period.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that what we needed was a book of virtuous lives, that is what Ziggy had gifted me with, were these people that he introduced us to and told us about, who jumped over small crimes to achieve great virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to do a secular saints book, because Ziggy came out of the whole Black Catholic world of up South. His mama was from Mississippi, but he was born in Chicago. And he was raised in the Catholic Church, would be buried in the Catholic Church. So he knew all about Saints' Day books. But Ziggy left the church to get into the show world. But he took a lot of aesthetic values of the church with him. So I thought a Saints' Day book, a book of secular saint virtues, was perfect to tell the story of Ziggy Johnson.
I love the world of Ziggy Johnson, where, when you think about the virtues of his saints, joie de vivre is a virtue in Ziggy's world. Knowing how to dance is his virtue in Ziggy's world. That's a moral code that transcends every way of being. And I think when I think about that and the different gifts that the saints bring, it makes me want to ask you, how do you want people to read this book? Because there's a way in which it's a little bit episodic, and I was interested in how you would want people to go about reading it.
Well, I want them to go about it the way they want to. It's a very adventuresome book, and it's an immersive book. There are 61 saints in the book. There are 52 regular weeks and then some movable feasts. So 61 different chapters, 61 saints, and you can either jump in on page 1, but you can jump in at the saint that interests you most. It could be a saint you've heard about in the past that you want to learn something different or more about, someone you've never heard of. You can take one of the quizzes that we have on our Black Bottom Saints website and figure out the saint you need now. You can go at it randomly.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
The year begins January 1, but we're not all born on January 1, and we don't meet each other the day we are born. You meet some people when they're 37, some when they're 12. And I like what you said about those virtues and what can be an unexpected virtue. One of the central virtues the book celebrates, a central theme of the novel, and this is all about how to read the book, is love is the strut, hate is the stumble. So you strut right into the chapter of the saint you think you're going to love most, because we all need good news these days.
That's right.
This book is full of good news.
Now, if you could, before I ask you this question, maybe I'll double it up if we can pivot that way, because I want to make sure we get to everything. It's just too important. The book is divided into seasons. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. But not only would I love you to talk about the seasons of the book, I would love it if you could only introduce the Southern Festival of Books audience to 4 saints, one from each season. Who would they be? So why the seasons, and then which saint from each season for this audience this evening?
Caroline, that's a great question. Well, it's a Saints' Day book, so it moves through the year. Ziggy's year begins on Father's Day, because he has for his dancing school, he has a giant extravaganza he calls Youth Colossal every Father's Day. And so his year begins after that. So the saints of summer are the saints of the roots of the Black experience. Most of them are born in the 19th century. These are the people often who have paternal, maternal relationships with Ziggy, but they are the roots of the Black experience, going back before slavery and before even back to pre-colonial Africa, the roots of the Black experience. The saints of fall are the saints that experience the hardest challenges. They're the ones who remind us that structural obstacles to racism can't be overcome by individual excellence, that we just have to improve society. Those are the saints of fall. The saints of winter are the geniuses of Black resilience.
That's my season.
There's a way to get over an absolutely hard, horrible, unfair thing. They are the ones who know how to do it and will help you do it. The saints of spring are the saints that get to pure thrive, past survive, despite. They are the sweetest saints of all. They get to pure thrive. They're the ones who absolutely live love is the strut. They're the ones who live joy is radical. So those are the seasons. And that is, I try to talk about a few saints. There's 61. I can't talk about all of them at any one program. But I am thrilled that you focused on the Southern Festival because we love it. We've been doing the Southern Festival since you were a baby in a stroller, in a snuggly. And we had a really big, when you were 3, we had a big year that year. That's the one that got caught.
I used to get a new outfit for it every year.
And we all 3 days of it. This child, we saw a lot. But I think for the Southern Festival books, and she did give me a little preview, she might ask me this question. I would pick 4 important writer saints who you might not realize are writers. So the first one I'm going to give you is Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters wrote her autobiography twice. One was called I Am the Sparrow. When women did not talk about rape, she, in her mid-century, 20th century autobiography, talked about her mother being raped on 2 occasions. She didn't just talk about it, she wrote about it. And then she wrote again, without a ghostwriter, her own autobiography. Again, she told her own story twice. Ethel Waters is an important actress, but she's an important author, and that's often overlooked. And she is part of the roots of the Black experience. For the saints of fall, I cannot pick a better one right now than Martin Luther King. He shot down in Memphis. So he's a perfect example. The individual excellence cannot overcome structural racism or violent white militia groups, organized and disorganized. But in this case, we are calling out to Martin Luther King as his final book that he published. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? And the chapter, Ziggy calls out that. He says, I love the fact that Martin Luther King is starting to talk about poverty, that he's starting to talk about some different things. Ziggy specifically shouts out to that book. So for the Southern Festival of Books, I give you Martin Luther King. For Saints of Resilience, I'm going to give you Winter. I'm sending out Sammy Davis to you.
Yeah.
Really important for you because we saw 3-year-old you in that first photograph. Sammy Davis started performing with his father and the man he called his uncle, Will Maston, when he was 3 years old. He too would write with the help of other editor, writer, ghostwriter, but with very much involved himself, an extraordinary autobiography called Yes, I Care. It's an extraordinary autobiography, almost 1,000 pages. It's one of the most interesting exposures of explorations of racism in the military you will ever want to see. And Sammy Davis, when you read and know about him, with his 2 fathers, is a one-man resiliency school. And the saint, my last one that I'm going to give you for the Southern Festival books is Clifford Fears, who's an extraordinary dancer. But I am including him. When Martin Luther King will win the Nobel Prize in Stockholm, Ziggy tells us this. First of all, Clifford was one of Ziggy's students. He discovered him in high school, put him in his shows. Lots of subtle things we should know about. But what Ziggy was so proud of, is that Clifford danced in Stockholm as a teenager when Martin Luther King received his Nobel Prize, and he danced to Little Brown Baby, the Paul Laurence Dunbar collection of poems. So to my young poet, making news, Caroline Randall Williams, I said, this wonderful Clifford Fears dancing to Little Brown Baby, how does that get forgot? Going from Detroit to Stockholm. And he will dance internationally, and he will get forgot. History gets erased, but then we are called upon, the poets and the novelists, to rewrite it. So those are the 4. If I had to give you 4 for the Southern Festival books, these are my writers.
Well, I just am terrifically moved by that list. And when you were naming the cocktails, spoiler alert, I got to have some insight into the naming process as an early reader. And hearing the Ethel Waters story just reminds me, my favorite cocktail name, Twice Told Story. I just love that, thinking about writing your story and then telling it again, just because you get to write and rewrite and reframe and demand that people witness. And I love that so much. So, Mom, I think that it might be a moment to ask you why every chapter ends with a cocktail.
Well,
and if there's anything else you want to share before I ask you that.
That is such a good question. Why every chapter ends with a cocktail? But I want to also ask why a Saints Day book. And I didn't tell you one thing about that is, how does someone get to be one of Ziggy's saints? How these individuals. And you want to go back and say, you got to be a saint if Ziggy loved you, as indicated by the fact that he mentioned you in one of his columns. I told you he wrote newspaper columns. You got to be a saint if Ziggy thought you knew something about moving from trauma to transcendence, because he had told all the little kids in your school stories of your life, moving you from trauma to transcendence. You got to be a saint if you had been inside the Gotham Hotel where Ziggy lived. If all these three things were true, you got to be a saint. But notice that Ziggy wanted to tell these stories about moving from trauma to transcendence. Ziggy knew life was hard. And he wanted to help children, particularly, and girls, be able to deal with a hard and unjust world. So the book addresses both public and private trauma. But the book's main theme is joy is radical. So each cocktail is a 5 sense addressed to joy. The touch, the taste, the scent, the sound, the sight of joy. That's what he learned in the church, where they had all that 5 sense addressed to the soul. Ziggy addresses the soul through the body self with these libations. There's 61 of them. 3 of them don't have alcohol, but the main inebriation is not the alcohol. The inebriation is the touch, the taste, the sight, the scent, the sound addressed to joy. And I love that. And also one of Ziggy's favorite saints is Thomas Bullock. And Thomas Bullock is a man who wrote a wonderful cocktail book that was published about 1917 called The Ideal Bartender. So if I tell you the deep, deep truth, that it's a Saints Day book, a hagiography, crossed with a cocktail book, Thomas Bullock. And another one of his favorite things is he loved him some Bricktop, and honoring Bricktop, that's another reason he closes all of these chapters with cocktails, because this is a Black woman who will start cocktail bars in Paris in 1924, in Rome, and in Mexico City. And she was one of Ziggy's closest friends. So that's why we end each chapter with a cocktail, a libation, to recommit to our theme. Joy is radical, and to have a way for my readers to come in themselves to shake up some joy when they shake up the cocktails while they're reading.
I love that. Mom, do you have a video that you'd like to introduce for us?
Actually, I do. I have a lot of great collaborators as working with this. My favorite being the poet Caroline Randall Williams, who helped me with some of the names of these cocktail recipes when we were developing them. But there is W.E.B. Du Bois writes about double consciousness brilliantly. You may not know that there is a group of African-American bartenders in Detroit, Michigan, where this book is set, who have formed something called the Double Strain Collective, which supports African-American hospitality workers and bartenders and celebrates them. And they've made an entire series of videos of all of the cocktails in the book, supported by Google Fiber. And we're going to just share one of them with you right now. Double Strain Collective from Detroit is in the house with us tonight. So while you're watching the video, see if you can go shake up something for yourself.
Cheers. Hmm.
Can you all hear us? If you can, I think you're not hearing the directions for the last lick. You are seeing it.
It's sort of fun to watch it being made either way, though. The materials are beautiful, and we're seeing black excellence.
So
and the ingredients.
I will go right there and tell you. So this is a libation for the feast day of Della Reese. And Della Reese is a very important saint. You may have known that she was a victim, or you may not know that she was a victim of domestic violence. And she actually stood up against her abuser. And one of the reasons that this book is a honoring of all women who stand up against someone who is violent towards them, and of all allies who stand with a woman who is being physically abused. In this case, the drink includes brown liquor and a wash of a red wine. And so it's actually going to look literally like a bruise on black skin. One of the things I want to shout out to about that is that cocktails are often taste narratives, and also metaphors. Visually, and also they can be visual metaphors. Right now you see her about to pour the red wine wash. Do you see that? And this comes from Thomas Bullock's 1970. All these recipes have roots in Thomas Bullock's 1917 book. And I'm saying 1917, 1917. And he uses wine washes in that book. And he had been making cocktails from about 1900. And people don't realize all this extraordinary African-American craft cocktail excellence that is early in the 20th century.
I love that, and well done with the narration. And you fused two of my my items, because I was going to ask you a little bit more about that cocktail after the video. And also, just fun fact for the audience, I haven't gotten to see that video yet. So that was actually really fun to watch that one being made. It's really powerful to watch sort of the narrative behind the drink made manifest, especially because it's so powerful. And, Mom, after watching that and thinking about Della Reese and making sure that that's the last lick, I think it's time for us to meet another one of your amazing young collaborators with whom I am so happy to share space in the Black Bottom Saints universe, my very own cousin, your niece, Maddie Ewing, who helped you set up the Black Bottom Saints virtual museum.
Yes, my architect, I think, is on board. Let's see her. And I can't wait to take you on a tour. All of the Southern Festival guests, this is one of my favorite things, tours of the Black Bottom Saints Museum.
Hi, I'm Maddie Ewing. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a freshman at the University School of Nashville, and I'm very excited to be making an appearance at this year's Southern Festival of Books. I worked on building the Black Bottom Saints Museum, and I'm very excited for you all to see it. Thank you.
Ninth grader at USN is being incredible. This from scratch, our complete museum. And this is the exterior of it. And if we can start that video, we're ready. I think you had to just hit play. Are we back in our video? There we are. This is the exterior. That's Orchestra Place. That's where Ziggy's hotel, the Gotham Hotel, was, where he lived. And this is the hidden saint. We're starting when we enter Eartha Kitt, who will go to Washington, D.C. and confront both LBJ and his wife. There may be some people in the current people that we would like to go to Washington and confront. Eartha Kitt was doing that way back in the 60s, and Ziggy was loving her for it. I will tell you afterwards why Ziggy doesn't make Eartha an official saint. But here we have entered into the gallery of summer. We've entered into summer, and we've got Robert Hayden. He's the first saint of the book. He was the first Black poet laureate of the United States. He was on the faculty for Fisk for a very long time. And one of the things we love about Robert Hayden, he was actually born in Black Bottom. These are the Black Bottom saints. And he is a person who used the tools of the classical academic world, the poetry of W.H. Auden, to shine a light on everyday Black beauty and art and everyday Black people. Robert Hayden, Ziggy's first saint, Ziggy's dear friend. We see many of the other saints of summer as we enter now into the gallery of fall. This is the saddest saint, the most significant saint, potentially. This is Tanya Blanding. She was shot down by Michigan State troopers in her home in the summer of 1967. She weighed 40 pounds. When we say her name, know that we've been saying it, some of us, since 1967. Tanya Blanding lived on the street that my cousin lived on. I played in front of her house. I've been thinking about Tanya Blanding really every week of my life since 1967. Shot down by Michigan State troopers. But here on the other side, we've got Elsie Roxborough. She's the first Black woman to attend the University of Michigan and get to live in the dorms. She will vie with Arthur Miller and come in third in an extraordinary playwriting contest. She will actually produce Langston Hughes. She will commit suicide in New York, passing for white because she was accepted neither in white nor Black society. When you're shot dead like Tanya Blanding, when you are shut out like Elsie Roxborough, you don't get to move from trauma to transcendence. You remind us we must build a better world. Della Reese, this, I've already spoken to you about the last lick. Her mother died when she was quite young. She was headed to Harvard or Spelman. She had been actually seen by her teachers as this being really an option for her. She wanted to be a psychiatrist. Her mother died. Her father became very neglectful, and she had to go into the show world to support herself and extended family members, and she did an extraordinary job. On the left, we have one of my absolute favorite saints, Laverne Baker. She will become the second woman to enter into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. When she is in Chicago performing, she will perform in dungarees and straw hat as Little Miss Sharecropper because she did not want to forget the ones who left behind. Ziggy loved Laverne Baker, and he put her in front of us so often that when I moved to the Philippines, one of the first things I did was try to go make a pilgrimage to see that Laverne Baker. Here we are in the Resiliency School, and there is Lloyd George Richards, who will begin life as a shoeshine boy in Detroit, Michigan, and he will rise to be dean of the Yale School of Drama. On his way to that, he will direct The Raisin on the Sun when it opens on Broadway. He will discover August Wilson. He will produce and direct so many of his plays, as I said, and he will launch so many Black and white actors at the Yale School of Drama. But he starts off as a shoeshine boy. Here we've got to see the people who make it all happen, the breadwinners. This is Billy D. Parker. He is in a bar here, but he is one of the people, one of the men and women who's working on the assembly lines. And because they're working on the assembly lines and making regular money, they are able to support this extraordinary Black art movement that is all about of Black music, painting, sculpture, dance. It's all committed to the way that Black art increases the capacity of both artist and audience to restore the self and know the self. There's Dr. Bob Bennett, Ziggy's personal physician. He also has an extraordinary cocktail, but he is a witness. He doesn't promise to save you. He promises to be so close. Your blood will spatter him and he will be witness. You will not be alone. These are the saints of winter, the resiliency school. And here we're getting into Ziggy's favorite gallery, the Thrive Gallery, the Gallery of Spring. We see the man who built and owned Ziggy's Hotel, John White, but he's one of these people. He was in the gambling business. You got to look past that to understand what he did about community building. We've got Maxine Powell, who will be one of the cornerstones of Motown. We have over here one of my favorite saints, Shirley MacNeille, PhD, a Black woman who had a PhD in psychology, studied with Piaget, and she will be the person who brings transcendental meditation to the United States and put meditation in the first inner city school systems. She is a thriver despite, like so many of Ziggy, like all of Ziggy's saints of spring. Here's Alf Thomas, who will found 3 different Black hospitals, own his own island between Detroit and Canada. He will serve on the board of the Detroit Symphony, and he will make sure some of Ziggy's last days are sweet. Here's a saint with Nashville connections, Teddy Rhodes, who will begin his golfing life caddying at Belmead. He will often appear in Ziggy's columns in one of the most touching. There's Ziggy. There's me in my Ziggy's Youth Colossal outfit at the bottom. But Alf Thomas, Teddy Rhodes, Ziggy will put in his column, Teddy's in a sand trap, when Teddy Rhodes was broke and old and sick. Ziggy Johnson put mentions of him in his column, in his Black newspaper, and Black people from all over the country sent Teddy Rhodes money in Nashville to help the end of his life be good. So here we've got our cocktail bar. And if you click on one of the glasses, you will see a recipe. That's for the 66 Rue Pigalle. That is the libation for the feast of the wonderful bricktop that I told you about before. And if you click on another one, I think you get that one, you may get Dawn Comes Sweet. Oh no, this is actually, I can see, is the libation for Ethel Waters that we talked about. And this is the Twice Told Story. The first one that we clicked on before I was looking at it was Dawn Comes Sweet, the libation for the feast of Joe Louis. If we come out to the front hall, you can see that there is actually a map of the galleries that will take you through the seasons. Remember, summer, the roots of the Black experience, fall, the biggest challenges, winter, the resiliency genius of Black culture, and spring, the thrive, thrive, thrive. If you look up above, you're going to see some of our sponsors, which included Google Fiber, that included Neil Krugman and the wonderful Shatin Foundation. We have so many wonderful sponsors. When you come back and visit the museum, and you can, I want you to spend time and look at that. How you can see the museum, go to www.alicerandall.com, click on Press Kit. It's hidden. It's only for people who come to a virtual event. And once you get to Press Kit, scroll all the way down. And when you see some flashing cards, double click on those and you'll be back in the museum. So that's pretty exciting. That hopefully that you'll come back and visit it at your leisure. If you click on any one painting, you will get a quotation from that chapter. You'll find out who that person is the patron saint of. In the front hall here, you see an introduction, and it includes, notice that the curator is Alice Randall, the museum architect was Madeline Ewing, the exhibit designer was Daria Smith, a brilliant Black woman who's with the Tennessee State Museum. Art Steps, a wonderful program out of Athens, Greece, is the physical program we built this on, but none of it would have happened without the art of Jimmy James Green, who is associated with Harlem, but began his painting life in Detroit, apprenticing to John Anye Lockhart, and he translated all 61 chapters of my book into 53 collage portraits that we have digitized and share with you in the Black Bottom Saints Museum. So come back and visit it when you like. Can't wait to see you here again.
Well. Mom, I love experiencing, Alice Randall, I love experiencing that museum. It never gets old for me. And I have to say, I took a little note, which I'm going to share with the readers because I can't help it. As I call myself to my students, a giant nerd. And I thought to myself that there's maybe a divide between what kind of saint you are to yourself and what kind of saint you are to the ones who need you. Because I was thinking about how I think that you're a winter saint to yourself, but you're very much a summer saint to me. You're very much part of my sense of being. You're very much part of what I understand and how I make choices moving forward. And I think I'm also a winter saint to myself. And I think that most sane Black people who are trying to navigate the world might be winter saints right now. But I think that I feel that I am a spring saint to you. And I think that, and then I'm a spring saint. I want to be a spring saint to people who come to me, because I don't feel that I'm so much of I am of the ancestors, but I'm not representing the ancestors. I'm representing what they hoped for when they did their work. So that's a different thing. But anyway, I just was really moved by the museum that time around. So I love
what you're saying there, because actually, in the way it's structured, the last saint of any season could often be in the next season.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these saints can be looked at in different lights, but this is how Ziggy saw them.
That's right.
I say that, when I was writing this book, I was born in Detroit in 1959. The census happened in 60. And so we know there were 122,808 Black girls living in Detroit that year. So I like to think I had 122,807 collaborators on this book. But the roots of Black girl magic go straight to Detroit. But the wisdom of the Black Bottom Saints is for everybody. The story, and that when you read the book and you see the wraparound story, is all about that the wisdom Ziggy wanted to mobilize, the 61 saints he wanted to mobilize to help one little Black girl get from trauma to transcendence. When she grew up to be a woman, well loved by Ziggy, she wanted to share that wisdom with the entire world. The wisdom of Black Bottom is for everyone. It is telling us that joy is radical, that we can move from trauma to transcendence, and that actually we can all gain so much from Black culture's historic knowledge of how to rise from the ashes.
That's right. That's right. Well, Mom, I think that this might be a moment where, honestly, I think that I want to leave it open for questions, but we have another moment when I will reopen for questions. But I think my next question for you, just because I want to make sure to be mindful of time, is to ask you about this little Black Bottom Saints song that I heard tell of. And if you wanted to tell anybody anything about that.
Well, I will just say that one of the greatest gifts my daughter has ever given me, she doesn't know I'm going to say this, is she introduced me to two utter geniuses. They are Louis York. They are actually Claude Kelly, Chuck Harmony, Claude Kelly. They are utter geniuses. In Ziggy's once-a-year shows, Sammy Davis would come perform. The Supremes came to perform. Very important. The Mills Brothers came to perform with Ziggy's kids. I think it is so amazing that because Caroline introduced me to these two literal geniuses, I say if Prince and Ray Charles were walking around Nashville right now doing something
so perfect,
not quite as good as Louis York.
Mm-mm.
And they have created a theme song for me. So alongside being, I have Claude on my team, makes me writer in America.
Hi, Pam. It's our
Hello,
family.
family. Hey,
We love you.
we miss and love you
I know,
both.
right?
We miss and love you too.
Hope you don't mind that we crashed the party.
It makes me, I'm tearing up that that you're having this amazing success with your other group right now, and tens of thousands, hundreds of people looking at them, and they would come on this Zoom. I just didn't even think this was possible. I'm really about to cry.
Well, Alice, we love you, and not only do Caroline, we love you both, and
We love you back.
But I mean, the other thing is that we're musicians, but we love literature. We love good books.
Yeah.
That's
Can you tell them about Tiny Book Club? Can you tell them, take a moment and tell them about how I got to be on that?
Of course. Well, so we are musicians. We call Weirdo Workshop here in Franklin, Tennessee, and one of our main initiatives, besides sharing music, is sharing the gift of reading and conversation through a community that does all that together. So we created this thing called Tiny Book Club, which started here in Franklin, but now is kind of spread all throughout the country. We've done in different cities, but it went virtual this year. And really, it's a way.
Never invited me, just saying.
Well, we have to invite the senior.
I'm saying, y'all know about a Black mama. Y'all know it's right. You did the right thing.
There's an order.
It's a real order.
We don't want to upset the Black Bottom Saints.
No.
No, but honestly, it's a place. The books are at 200 pages, and it's a place for us to now virtually have a community where we don't lecture or have a class. We just talk about how the book makes us feel, what we learn and share. And the last one we had, which was about a month and a half ago, was about the Black Bottom Saints, and we were lucky to have, for the first time ever, the author of Black Bottom Saints, Alice Randall, come and share, and also hear what these people from all over the country felt about this beautiful new book. And it really is a place for everyone. It's open. Whoever's watching should join. It's at Tiny Book Club at weirdoworkshop.com. It's open to everyone. The more, the merrier. Caroline, come next time. We might surprise you with something. But the idea is that we want everyone to be in the habit of reading, sharing, community, talking, learning, growing.
I have to say, the first one I attended, I met them as an attendee with Jamaica Kincaid, and I will say for my Southern Festival audience, literally I have been to so many book clubs all across the United States for myself and just as a guest for people. This was the most interesting. That one was utterly riveting. The quality of the conversation. They have intersectional audience that is so profoundly progressive and real, that they are one of the few places I felt in this divided time that intersections are real and true and not denial and just wish. So I want to say that being able to be part of the Tiny Book Club was one of my favorite life deep book experiences. So you all should get on them and participate in these conversations.
Yes.
They are so, but I have to get back to, they did me the biggest honoring. I am so excited because I can't even tell you all their accolades. We need to hear.
They've been nominated for like a lot of Grammys, and they've written, every one of you that's listening has heard a song. They have elevated your mood and changed your life by a word that they wrote or a song they produced. There is no way that that's not true. And you can't say that about many pairs of people on this planet. So just know that about them.
Thank you, Caroline. That's big. And now we have to live up to that.
Right.
Anyway, but back to the more important person, my mother.
Right. We're family, so it gets comfortable.
That's true. It's real. We in the house.
Chuck, tell me. Break it down a little bit.
Yes. So we've actually been talking to Alice a year or so about the book, and just being a part of the process really helped us to come up with something musical that represents the feeling of this story and of this great book. And so we went into the studio like we do and just felt inspired to write something that Ziggy would be proud of.
Yes.
And so we came up with the Black Bottom Saints. We hope everybody enjoy it.
Yes.
And when you see these images, they were part of that too. These guys are really
very much so.
And you might see a couple of those images in this little special
in this little video.
This little video we did to celebrate the release of the book and the song and Ziggy's mission in life. So Should we show them the video?
Please.
Please do.
Please enjoy for a few minutes the Black Bottom Saints theme.
Yes.
It's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. I guess it took the Black Bottom Saints to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't you get yourself a drink at the bar, raise a glass and let's celebrate the glory of the Black Bottom Saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. In Black Camelot, the music was hot, and everyone knew everyone's name. There's simply no denying that the factory folk caused a revolution in their own special way. It's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. I guess it took the Black Bottom Saints to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't you get yourself a drink at the bar, raise a glass and let's celebrate the glory of the Black Bottom Saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. Oh,
Guys, get me every time.
in Black Detroit, the girls and the boys were dancing with their own kind of flair. And Ziggy lit the fire with one hell of a show. The stars came out for a colossal affair. Oh, it's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. Well, I guess it took the Black Bottom Saints, oh, to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't we get ourselves a drink at the bar, raise a glass and just celebrate the glory of the Black Bottom Saints. Oh, the stories of the Black Bottom Saints. Oh, the glory of the Black Bottom Saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. Oh, oh. I said I hope that you remember their names.
Here's to that.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Cheers, cheers.
Support these heroes in our community. Thank you.
Yes,
Great
please.
workshop.
Yeah.
So you know we love you, and we wish we could be there in person, drinking and celebrating.
Right.
But music connects us all, so thank God we were able to be a part of this in our special way.
Absolutely. Next year we'll do some. We'll be together. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Of course. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We're so grateful to Chuck and Claude. We're so inspired by them and the Nashville community, the creative community. And, you know, Mom, just as we wrap up here, because we've only got 6 more minutes, it's amazing how time flies when you're speaking to this brilliant creative people. I wanted to ask you this more serious question, because we're in a serious time. It's a transcendent time, but it's also a dramatic time. And it's a wild political time. And in this moment, if you could send a saint to help America through, and you only had one saint that you could send, who would it be?
If I had to send one saint right now,
Yeah.
it would be Lynette Dobbins Taylor. Lynette Dobbins Taylor was the first Black woman to ever dance with an American president at his inaugural ball. But to understand who she is, you have to go back to the summer of 1933 in Alabama when she, and I'm going to tell you the story the way Ziggy tells it, when she is swimming in a lake at a 4th of July picnic and her brother starts to drown. And she goes in to save him, and her brother starts to drown her as well as him. And her father witnesses this. And she breaks away from her brother by going further down because she's willing to bring her brother under the water and get free. But she goes back and he pushes her under again. Her father comes in and he pushes the boy up on his shoulder so he is under the water, which gives her enough time to think. And before he does that, he's telling her what she has to do. Lynette Dobbins hits her brother upside his head with a stick and pulls him out of the water. Her father drowns, having saved his 2 children with the help of his daughter at the price of his daughter's innocence. But she saved her brother and she saved her own life. Her father was a principal of a Black school in what Ziggy calls coal and cotton Alabama. This is a part of Alabama where the men were working in the coal mines and in the women and children were working in the cotton fields. And the people helping them, serving them, the Black people, were from Robe and Road, Alabama. They are the Black people who wore preacher's robes and had graduated from schools, and so they were teachers and nurses, and some of them were doctors, and they were the 1, 2, 3 middle class, upper middle class Black families in one town here and there all across Alabama that would get together like at the 4th of July. And on this particular 4th of July, Lynette Dobbins, Dr. Dobbins, decided he would not let his wife watch 2 children die, even if he had to sacrifice his own life. Lynette Dobbins had graduated high school. She was only, I think, 14 years old then. 4 years later, she would have graduated college. And she will be teaching in her own school, and eventually she'll be a principal. And she will marry Hobart Taylor, one of the richest Black men in America. His father was a Texas oilman, Black. And he will help put Lyndon Johnson in the White House. Hobart and Lynette Dobbins Taylor will be architects, part of the architects of All the Way with LBJ. She doesn't get to dance with the American president out of some sort of general gratitude, but because she and her husband helped put him in the White House. And so I am hoping that the way Lynette Dobbins Taylor stood beside LBJ, the way Lynette Dobbins Taylor defined affirmative action, which had nothing to do with how we see it now, but it was take not one step back, do what you have to do to save your brother, to save yourself. The way Lynette Dobbins Taylor stood by LBJ is the way I see Kamala Harris standing by Joseph Biden, and I hope they go all the way to the White House. So the saint I send to us right now is Lynette Dobbins Taylor, who about working behind the scenes to make important political change.
That is beautiful. Lynette Dobbins Taylor is a saint that America needed and America needs, and that you have done the precious and important work of witnessing and writing into a bigger memory. And I'm so grateful to my mother as an artist, completely separate from my gratitude to her as a daughter, for the work that she does to make sure not only that Black Lives Matter, but that Black stories are recorded with the dignity and posterity that they deserve.
And for everyone, I want to say that there are very few people who get to be 2 generations in a writing family. Caroline's actually 3 generations, and I have lived long enough that I helped inspire her to be a writer, I hope. She's totally inspired me every day to be the writer. This last generation of my life, this time for me and for this election is about old heads and new voices, we all have to get together, and our family, we're old heads and new voices, and we all have to remember the past and look to make a new future. Making this, using literature to make the American dream an American reality.
We love that. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you for staying with us for the hour of talking about Black Bottom Saints. If you don't have your copy, please get it from Parnassus. Please get it. That was not planned. That's just a mother-daughter symbiosis.
Were these outfits?
Please go get this book from Parnassus Books, or from any purveyors at the Southern Festival of Books. I don't know how you are selling them this year, but please go get this book and celebrate it, and remember the Black lives in it, and vote.
And remember, you can just read one short chapter by Lynette Dobbins. This book, you don't have to read the whole thing. There's some is short. It's 1.5 pages. Joy is radical. Take good care of yourselves.
Be nice to yourself. Amen.
It's a line from the book. Thank you. That quote. Be nice to yourself. Amen. Don't stress yourself out reading the big book when you only want to read this short chapter.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and happy Friday night. And thank you for joining us at the Southern Festival of Books to celebrate Black Bottom Day.
Every way.